Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DiCerbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world. And today we have Terry Steiner. Terry is the women's national team head coach, which includes not only the world team, but the Olympic teams. And he resides and works in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Terry has been involved with the sport of wrestling for most of his life. He is a twin. He has a twin brother, Troy. And Terry is married to Jody. And Jody and Terry have a daughter, Raven. Terry is a 3-time All-American from the University of Iowa, and he is a 1-time national champion. The year he was national champion, he was also the NCAA's Most Outstanding Wrestler of the Year. Terry is super involved in wrestling and very unselfish and helpful to other people in the sport of wrestling. He's widely respected and well-liked. And I had occasion to meet him at the World Team qualifiers in Las Vegas last year, or the year before last, I can't remember. And we've been talking ever since. Welcome, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Thanks for having me on the program today.
My pleasure. Did you happen to see that I got some press in Win magazine last week?
I didn't, but I haven't seen it, but yeah.
On the inside cover where Brian writes his article, he wrote about someone else. I can't remember who. And then in the second part, he wrote about my podcast and the fact that interviewed Jordan Burroughs and Joey McKenna, and that you were coming on. He mentioned you as well in the article. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, that's great.
But I feel like a lot of wrestlers may know about your career, but that maybe a lot of people that listen to my podcast don't know a lot about it. And then there's also a lot of people that sort of know you as a wrestler, but don't know much about your life other than that. And you know me, I'm very inquisitive, so I want to know all these things.
Yeah.
So I'm in the habit of asking about early life. Like, what are your earliest memories from when you were growing up? Your structure of your family, where you lived, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, I was born and raised in Bismarck, North Dakota. Both of our parents were working class people. My mom was a hairstylist and owned hairstyling salons, and my father was kind of a jack of all trades. He did everything, but his main job in our formative years was he worked for Ford Tractor Company as a salesman, and then he also he moved on from that to a trucking company, a freight hauling company called Midwest Motor Express in Bismarck, North Dakota, and he was in that business. He was there for about 25 years, maybe a little bit less, until he got sick. And when he was there, he was everything from the tire man to the mechanic to in charge of all the dispatch and everything like that. So he kind of worked his way out of the shop and into the office in his later years. But I think he was a person that was I know he was a person that was very well respected and trusted, and probably didn't have an enemy in the world. That was who my father was. And he was always there for others. And with my dad's, with his personality, and then my mom was the other side of it. She was the spark plug and the spunk, and just had that find a way to get things done attitude, right? And I think between the two of them, they were a perfect blend of probably who I am. they taught us that hard work is first, right? And treating people with respect and how you want to be treated is the most important things in life, and everything else will fall into place. And they had us when they were 18 years old, so it definitely was a surprise to them, and they just made it work from the beginning. They just said that we just put our heads down and found a way to get things done and make things happen. And they weren't well equipped. They both, neither one of them were college educated, but they knew how to work, and they knew how to connect to people, and really that's how they gained success. And they really were not only a successful, I would say, couple. Financially they did okay. We never had to worry about anything. But I think just how they tied into the community, they were the pillars of their families and the community that they were involved in. A lot of people relied on them, and that's how they lived their life, and they were happy to do it. They were there to serve others and help how they could, and that's how we were raised. We were raised around our grandparents and extended family. They say it takes a village, and truly, in our case, it took a village. And our grandparents were a big part of our upbringing, a big part of raising us and taking care of us when mom and dad were working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet and to get themselves ahead in life. And so, because of that, we're very close to our extended family and our extended families on both sides. And I think, we realize that, even though I may have some success in one part of the world right now, in the wrestling world, that, not everyone lives like that. And I think that, it's just knowing where I came from and how we were raised. I think it always keeps you humble and keeps you grounded, right? There's more important things in life than money, and there's more important things in life than success. It's really going to, and my, I guess, thought is, how are you going to be remembered at the end of the day, right? Did you help someone in their life move forward? Did you help your corner of the world be a better place? Or was it just about success? And so I think that was very well rooted in us as we grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, so I have a twin brother, Troy.
In addition,
who's actually older than me by 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a younger sister, Tracy, who is 8 years younger. And Tracy, grew up being our fans, and really probably grew up as an only child, because by the time she was in 4th grade, we were leaving for college, right? And so she grew up being big supporters and fans of Troy and myself. But we always grew up there wasn't a sibling rivalry. There was more of a protection. We were there to protect her and bring her along and inspire her how we could. And to this day, I think, we have a great relationship, the three of us, and hopefully that stays like that forever.
How did you get involved in wrestling to start?
My father got it. My father wrestled for like 1 year in high school, but nothing extensively. But when we were in kindergarten, he entered us in it was a state freestyle competition in Bismarck, North Dakota, and at that time it definitely wasn't a love at first sight. It was, he put us on the wrestling mat. We didn't know what we were doing, and we had 2 uncles at the time, my mom's brothers, that wrestled in high school during that time, and so they were kind of like big brothers to us, and we were around them a lot. So we aspired to be like them, and so they were wrestling, and so my dad entered us in a competition when we were in kindergarten, and at the period between matches, we'd come to the side and we didn't want to go back out. And he kind of shoved us back out there, and then we never really wrestled. We wrestled that tournament, and then in about fourth or fifth grade, the same coach that we ran into at that first competition ended up being a lifelong coach and mentor of ours, a guy named Milo Trusty, and he started the Matt Pack Wrestling Club in Bismarck, North Dakota, and I really credit a lot of our success to not only our uncles getting us started in the sport and my father, but also to Milo, who really kept things fun. Wrestling was always about, we had fun at wrestling practice. We had fun on wrestling trips and wrestling practices. And he really disguised work, I think is the best way I can put it, is he disguised work and made challenges for us. And it was always about living up to that challenge and trying to reach something greater than it was thinking of it as, oh, we have another sprint or we have another day of practice. It was more about what can we get out of this and who's going to be the best today. And so Milo really had a big I would say a big effect on our careers, really all the way through high school. And even to this day, if I get on the phone with Milo, he still excites me. He's 75, 76 years old, and he's still probably all he wants to talk about is wrestling, right? And so even to this day, so he was the one that instilled that, I think, that just appreciation for the sport. And so that's how we got started and really stayed involved in the sport.
So in high school, I assume identical twins, you're the same size?
We were close to the same size, but there was a set of twins in the same city that we lived in, and they were always wrestling each other off, and one of them was always off the team or on the team. And I think it was in middle school that my mom said, "We're not doing that, right? We got to figure this out." And so we looked at our hand size and foot size, and my feet and hands were a little bit bigger, and from that point on, it was decided that you're going to wrestle the higher weight, and Troy's going to wrestle the lower weight, and that's what we're doing. And naturally, we grew apart like that, and we grew probably 8 to 10 pounds apart from each other as time went on, and so that happened.
How old were you then?
We were probably, when that happened, that was probably 7th or 8th grade. I would guess when we really started to change. I would say 8th grade. 7th grade, I was smaller than Troy actually in 7th grade, but I was trying to make weight. I was at like 70 pounds or 74 pounds, and I wrestled 70 pounds that year. And then the next year, in 8th grade, I was wrestling at like 105 or 110 pounds. So I definitely had a growth spurt at that time. And from that point forward, I wrestled at a bigger weight class than Troy did. So
9th grade?
Is that 9th grade, I was 112 pounds. Mm-hmm. Troy was 105 pounds.
That's when you began to assert your dominance?
Yeah. Well, that happened before that. And that happened at birth, right? That's why Troy's 7 minutes older, because I kicked him out.
You kicked him out. Got it. Yeah. He didn't elbow you out.
No, I kicked him out, and then that made him the oldest, but it was because I threw him out of the ring.
Gotcha. You got the 1 point. So right. Push out.
That's right.
What was your high school team like? Was Milo your coach in high school, by the way?
He was not. He was our club coach. We had great high school coaches. There's too many people to name. I mean, I think that the one thing that we learned early is you learn from everyone, right? And we had some great mentors and coaches growing up. And we had, we were always the Century High School is where we went. Century High School in Bismarck, North Dakota. And at the time, and still probably to this day, Bismarck High School has been the dominant force in the sport of North Dakota high school wrestling, and they've won state title after state title. And we couldn't go to Bismarck because we lived on the other side of the city, and you couldn't cross those boundaries. And my mom and dad, it's crazy to me to think that now at this day and age, people move across the country so their kid can wrestle in a program or this or that. My parents, they weren't moving across town, right? I mean, we weren't. They were said, we don't live there. You have to go to Century High School, and so I think it was our idea that if we can't wrestle for Bismarck, then if we can't join them, let's beat them, right? And that was our goal, right? And we end up winning state our last 2 years as a team. And the 1 year we actually had, out of the 13 weight classes, I think we had 9 in the state finals that year. And we ended up with, I think, 5 champs and 4 seconds. But really going in, I think we had 7 number 1 seeds and 2 number 2 seeds. And so, we really had a dominant team, and not just in North Dakota, really in the upper Midwest, we wrestled everyone, and we had a dominant team that year, and, some great memories and a great team to be a part of. Right? So,
anybody from that team go on to do well in college in addition to you?
At the smaller school level, at the NAIA level, and maybe even Division II level, there was definitely had some success there. But I think at the time, really, I mean, Division I wrestling it seems so far removed, right? And I think that we had dreams. Troy and I had different dreams and aspirations, and we wanted to go to Division I. We knew we wanted to, but I don't know. We probably didn't have, at the time, we probably didn't have the credentials to do that. And we just had a belief and a work ethic that we were going to make this happen. And there was a lot of doubters and this and that, but we thought we were pretty good. We had a lot of success in high school, and I don't know if we were good or not, right? But we thought we were, right? And we weren't afraid to work, and so I think that got us a long ways early in our careers. Yeah.
So how many state titles did you win?
I won 2 state titles. My freshman year, I never placed. I was second as a sophomore, and then I won 2 state titles. Troy was second as a freshman, and then won 3 state titles. And but coming from North Dakota at that time, people weren't looking to North Dakota for a wrestling recruit. They just weren't, and so we knew we had to get ourselves out and about and around the country. So our junior year of we started our sophomore year. We went to a few USA regional tournaments around the country, and then our junior year, we went to every single regional in the country, and that really exposed us, right? We got ourselves out there and got our name out there, and people started paying attention to us, and that really helped us as far as starting to be a recruit. But I think the biggest thing, probably why we landed at the University of Iowa, was Randy Lewis at the time. Randy was a 2-time NCAA champion for the University of Iowa from South Dakota, and he was also a 1984 Olympic champion. And he came up to North Dakota one year and did I think it was our junior year, maybe sophomore year, but one of the years he came up and did a camp up in North Dakota, and we were at the camp and got to know him, spent a lot of time with him, and then he invited us down to his camp in Rapid City that summer, and a bunch of the Iowa wrestlers, and I think even Coach Gable was there because his sister was getting married to one of the former Iowa wrestlers, and so we were invited down there and got exposed a little bit more to some of the, Coach Gable and Coach Zaleski and people like that, and then I think when it came time for recruiting, we never heard anything. It's not like recruiting is now. I mean, it was a little bit different. There was a set time period when people recruited you, but we just never heard anything from University of Iowa until it was probably like in February. And Randy, I think, really opened the door, and he just went to Coach Gable and just said, you need to look at these guys. He said, if you don't look at them, they're going to come back and bite you in the butt. And he said, you need to take a look at them. And I think he believed in Randy, and he just said, if you feel that strong about him, then we're going to look at him. So someone came and watched. It wasn't Coach Gable, but someone came and watched the state high school tournament that senior year. And then Coach Gable came up for a visit, and Coach Gable is very, and I think he probably recruited like that everywhere. He was a very quiet guy, and when he sat in front of you, he was very straightforward, and he never promised you anything. He just talked about the University of Iowa program, and he let you compare his program to everyone else's. But he just said, I'm not going to promise you anything. I'm not going to promise you that you're going to make the team. I'm not going to promise you that you're going to be an All-American or a national champ. He said, the reality of it is we're going to give you an environment that you can succeed in, but most of the work is going to be up to you, right? And I think when he said that, it was scary as an 18-year-old kid, but also we knew it was very realistic, and we knew that he wasn't trying to just talk us into something. And when other teams came in to recruit, they were very, just telling you how great you were going to be and how great you were going to make the team and this and that. And Coach Gable just wasn't like that at all. And I think for us, that was the kind of upbringing that we grew up in. We were never told anything like that. We weren't given anything. We had to earn everything. And I think that we were comfortable with that, right? And we were comfortable with the person that Coach Gable was. And we really, at that time, it's not like today where you had access to everyone. What we knew of Dan Gable, we read in a magazine, right? Or we, read in a newspaper or something like that. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have anything like that. So it was a completely different world, right? And so for him to make the trip up and sit in our kitchen and talk with our parents, and it meant a lot, right? And other programs did the same thing, but we just took it at face value. This guy's speaking the truth, and he's not trying to blow smoke anywhere. He's just being honest, and I think we were pretty comfortable with that. And our parents wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't give us any indication of where they wanted us to go or anything. And it wasn't like they were throwing full rides at us. It just wasn't a time like that. And so, that they gave us an offer at all, we were excited. We were excited that they offered us tuition, that they were going to pay for our school. And it was like, really? I mean, we couldn't believe it, and I think as you move forward, and as I was in college wrestling, you see kids that the constant dialogue in their own brain or maybe in their home is, what are they going to do for you, right? And it's like, well, they just, in our minds, it was like, well, they just gave us tuition. What are we going to do for them, right? And so that's kind of where our mind was. And I think we knew that our work ethic and our discipline and the structure that we had and what our parents taught us growing up, we knew that aligned with Coach Gable. The one thing we knew about Coach Gable was his work ethic and his discipline and structure. That's all we ever heard about, right? And so we knew that aligned with the head coaches at the University of Iowa. And so I think that's eventually why we signed with the University of Iowa. So
I'm not surprised. I don't know him, Dan Gable, at all, but my understanding is he's very direct. And in today's world, too, I feel like it's paradoxical because there's so much nonsense out there, and people promising you the stars and not delivering and whatnot in every walk of life. And there's so many distractions online and all that stuff. I like to say, for me at least, authenticity is the coin of the realm going forward. And I feel like human relationships and one-on-one meetings and things like that that are in some ways becoming a thing of the past with video conferencing and so on and so forth. But I think
Mhm.
it's a paradox, like, things like LinkedIn, where a person can get 1,000 connections, but maybe have only a few close relationships.
Right.
And it sounds to me like, Dan Gable was the guy the message that you wanted to hear most. And I feel like it's a timeless message and maybe more important than ever today.
Yeah, no, I think it's a timeless message. I heard this last week, and I heard this saying, like, when you pray to God at night, do you pray to be blessed, or do you pray to be a blessing to others?
Mm.
Right. And I love it, because I think so many times in today's world we're just praying to be blessed. We want the best, and instead of, how about just being there for others and being a blessing to the situation you're in, and the program you're in, and the people you're around, and the organization you're around. And if you can do that, things come back, right? And I think that um, that's how Coach Gable was, right? I mean, we were just trying to please him, right? We
Mm.
wanted to do the best for him. We wanted to put a smile on his face, and he wasn't a guy that you know, gave a lot of pats on the back, right?
No false praise from him.
No, and it wasn't
Mm.
that you knew he cared, right? You knew he cared about you as a human being, but he wasn't gonna just try to make you feel good, right?
Mm.
And if it wasn't right, or if it wasn't something wasn't up to standard, uh, he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't say that he was happy about it, right? And I think in today's world, when people need so much positive feedback and this and that to keep themselves going, I mean, we never, I don't know, that's something we never got unless the job was done right, right? And we knew that going in. I mean, again, we knew the expectation going into the University of Iowa. We knew what the standard was. They at that time they had won like 9 NCAA titles, and then they lost to Iowa State in '87, I believe. But we were coming in 88, so we knew that he was looking to change something, and he wanted people that were like-minded and thought the same way as he did, and we felt that that's where we fit. That's where our pieces fit together, and you know and it wasn't easy. I don't think I enjoyed my college career like probably my daughter enjoyed her college experience, right? It just wasn't like that, right? I went to college for a real purpose, right? And at the end of the day, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. So to me, it wasn't about how much fun I was having. It was about, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and both on the mat and off the mat.
But what is it like? For most of my life, I've wanted all this external praise and people telling me stuff, and basically because I didn't have the confidence myself. And as I got older, through reading religion, philosophy, history, and you know me well enough at this point to know, like, most of that stuff for me is coming from inside. It's not really relevant what anyone else is saying to me. Like, for me, it's not that important what other people are saying to me about my success at this point. And I feel like it took a long time for me to get there, and a lot of reading. And I feel like when you use the word enjoy about your college, to me, like, I didn't experience your college the way that you did, but when I do things like triathlons and stuff like that, the reward is so deep and so meaningful. Like, it's not fun like going and, what I used to think of as fun, going and getting
Hmm.
drunk at a fraternity party.
Hmm.
But to me, it's like so much better. I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine drinking now and going and having fun in that way. And I couldn't imagine a more deep reward than doing a full Ironman, which is, I do habitually at this point.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's how college was. But I don't think at that point I probably I probably sought after that praise, right? But it was hard to attain, right? So
Mm-hmm.
to get a pat on the back or hey, great job from Coach Gable, you had to be doing something right, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not that he was hard, not that he never raised his voice, he never probably said anything negative, but to get that positive praise, you had to be doing something right, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and so but I think at the bottom line is you knew he cared. There was a respect for you because of the what you were putting in to try to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I knew that, and I knew that my first 2 years at the University of Iowa probably weren't great success. The first year I redshirted, and you're just climbing your way and building those blocks for success. And my second year, I never made the team, right? And so there was no promises, right? And I knew, and I knew that going in, right? He told us that flat out, and so all of a sudden, when the second year, when I'm not on that team, and I asked for a wrestle off, and he gave me a wrestle off, and I lost, and then he put me in a couple matches, and every time he put me in, I fell flat, right? And so at the end of the year, I asked for a wrestle off, and he said I can't do it, and I wasn't happy with it, but I understood.
Who
I
was
understood.
who was in front of you?
Uh, So a guy named Doug Stryker. Doug was an All-American that year, and he was only 1 year older than me, right? And so Doug was coming into when it was my sophomore year and his junior year, he was coming into the season ranked number 2 in the country, right? And I knew that was my obstacle, right? And I knew it from the last year when he beat me off the team, and I knew it all through the summer, and I knew that if I was going to get ahead of him, something had to change, and I'm going to go back to that my freshman year. Towards the end of the year, I was wrestling one day with one of the post grads, and Gable was just sitting in the practice room, and I was in there, and we went through a whole practice, and I'm walking out of the wrestling room into the showers, and Coach Gable just he never said anything the whole practice when he wasn't out there giving me pointers. He just watched, and then I was walking into the locker room, and he just said, "You're going to have to get a lot tougher than that if you're going to want to accomplish what you want to accomplish." And I remember I went home, and I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think straight, and really it hit me. And I came back the next day, wrestled the same guy. And of course, I came in with a little different preparation, probably a little different mindset, and went through and had a better practice. And Coach Gable was there again, and watching, and I was walking out of practice again. He said, "Difference in night and day." That's
Hmm.
all he said. And so that was Coach Gable's kind of communication. It was very, very, very direct. Not much words were said, but when he did speak, you listened, right? And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that experience, and that Doug Stryker, to this day, I needed him. I
Mm.
needed him to make me who I became as a wrestler, and that challenge was what I needed to get some more belief in myself, and maybe doing things. You think you're doing things right, and then you have to dig deep, and there's nowhere to point fingers, right? You got to look in the mirror and say, am I doing everything as good as I can do? What do I need to change?
Right.
And I know that at that time, really, I know Coach Gable, he wanted me on the team. I could tell, but he couldn't put me there, right? He was
Hmm.
going to put on the team whoever deserved to be on it and who was competing the best. And so so uh, and then my brother was the same way. He was there for me, you know, as he was trying to find his way. He was there to help me, and I was there to help him. But nobody can do it for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you realize that you have people around you that are willing to help, but you got to do the job. And
I,
so that's what I love about the sport, I think, is it comes down to you, right?
Mm.
And so much with life is the same thing, right? Is, we can point fingers and not be happy with this or that, but at the end of the day, if things aren't happening how you want, look in the mirror, right? There's probably a reason, right?
So early in my career, like literally the beginning, like the first year, I
Mm-hmm.
called my mom and I was sobbing, like literally crying. People won't talk to me. They hang up on me. They're mean, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling my mother this whole thing. And she says, "So what would you rather do?" And I said, "Well, nothing. I think I, I need to do this." And she said, "So why are you talking to me?"
Yeah, yeah, for
Oh,
sure. And that's
I can relate to your story. I just was never a very good wrestler. That's a problem.
yeah. Well, I don't. I think it's with every area of life, right? I
Right.
mean, I think that the things I learned on the wrestling mat, and really, if I look at my college career and how that went, I mean, there was so many times in there where there was plenty of reasons to walk away, right? And
For
there was
sure.
plenty of reasons to give up and walk away, but something just kept pulling you forward, and I don't know if it was uh, the wanting to win or not wanting to lose, right? I don't know which is stronger, right? But
Me
I
neither.
think, and I think they're both equally important, to be honest. Um, but I know that I'll fast forward now to my senior year of college, and
Can I hold you back a
yeah,
moment? I
yeah,
want to know, um, sophomore year, you
hmm
have a summer off. What did you do that summer? In other words, you didn't make the team as a freshman. You went home. You knew something had to change.
yeah. Well, I never went home. I
Oh,
mean,
you didn't.
really. I mean,
Okay.
maybe for a week or two, just to see family and this and that. We did some camps back there, but really, we spent our when we got to Iowa, we knew that we needed to accomplish what we wanted to do. We needed to be all in, and so we spent our summers, working
On campus?
camps, working camps on
Mm-hmm.
campus for Coach Gable, and then also just getting our own training in, right,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that we were doing what we need to do. So I was never a person, and neither was Troy, that we needed a bunch of time off or anything like that. We trained, throughout the summer and everything like that, because we knew that was the time to get ahead. That's when
Mm-hmm.
people are taking time off. That's when they're at home and going fishing or spending time with family and things like that. So we knew that this was our time to really let's put the gas pedal down, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and gain right now when everyone else is resting. This is our time to climb. And so that's what we did, right? And so and then I think
What was
there
Doug Stryker doing that summer? Was
it
he
did.
with you?
No, I mean he was around some, but it didn't matter. I didn't. The focus wasn't him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew I had to overcome him
Mm-hmm.
to make the team, but the focus was what am I doing to better
Mm-hmm.
myself, right? And how am I getting stronger? And how am I learning more technique and expanding my wrestling knowledge and at the end of the day, I got to know when I step on the mat in my wrestle off the next year or the next fall, uh, am I going to be able to look in the mirror and say I truly deserve this, right? And so but also during that time, I started paying attention more to the mental aspect of the game, right, and starting to realize you can control emotions. You can control how you handle situations. And before I would get upset a lot and just outwardly just yelling and screaming when something went bad or this or that in the wrestling room, and instead of really not letting people see that and letting people see what you want them to see, right? And I talk about it to this day. What's your body language and what's your facial expressions, and how are you handling yourself when tough situations arise? And I think you can either elevate your opponent or you can kind of diminish them by the messages you're giving out, right? And so we talk about it a lot to this day in the wrestling room. Like, what's your body language? change? Are you controlling your own emotions? You can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you react and respond to situations. And I started to dig into that a lot more. And I think the one question that was asked to me around this time, maybe even earlier, that it really hit me was, um, how how do you talk to what's your self-talk like? How do you talk to yourself? And the question that was asked me was, if you talk to your best friend the way you talk to yourself, would they still be your best friend? And at the time, I could honestly say, no, they'd probably be my worst enemy, right? Because I treated other people good, but I didn't treat myself good, right? And how I talked to myself and how that voice inside of me, I didn't control that. And so I really started to pay attention to that more, and realizing that you've got to help yourself more than other people. You're not someone that is always going to be there to help you. You got to do that within your own ears, right? And so that aspect of it really took a step forward as well, I would say, during that time frame. But I knew when I came in, I didn't know if I was going to win, but I knew I was prepared, and I knew I had done everything I could to be on that team come that fall.
So you may have listened to the Mark Allen podcast I did, but if you haven't, he says something in there. He went 0 for 6 his first 6 tries at Kona. And he said his whole team was telling him, give it up. His family was saying, this isn't your race. You can win everybody everywhere else, but you can't win at Kona. And he was like, but this is my dream. This is what I want to do.
Right.
And he realized, he had to look inward. And he said, maybe it's not going to happen. But I know I haven't had my best race yet. And it's possible that my best race won't be enough to win. But I'm going to train to have my best race ever. And I hope that Dave Scott at the time has his best race ever too, because I want to beat him on his best day.
Right.
It was just a great, and it sounds to me like you were on the same, like you wanted Doug to have his best day and you wanted to have your best day. Although you weren't even thinking about Doug, it sounds like towards the end.
Yeah, it wasn't about anyone. It wasn't about the obstacles out there. It was how was I handling myself, right? And how was I controlling my own emotions and my own insecurities and everything like that? And what was I doing in preparation to overcome that? Was I willing to make those changes? And so that's where my focus became. It was just solely on myself, right? And then if I can be an assistance to Troy or anyone else on my team, then great. But I need to focus on me and help other people along the way, right? And so,
but
I
if you're
learned a
good
lot.
with you, you're so much more helpful to everyone else too.
For sure. And so, there was just, the thing that the University of Iowa had at that time is they had such a nucleus of elder statesmen, like people that had already wrestled in college that were around the program training for world and Olympic success. And there was so many people there that you were humbled every day, right? It wasn't like you all of a sudden you won some matches and you can come in the room and kick everyone's tail. There was still so many people higher level than you that you were always climbing. You were just trying to find your way, right? And I think that was so important as well, right? That you constantly realize that there was another level, right?
Just like martial arts, you're always in a state of becoming. You never arrive,
Yeah, for sure. And so, that it was a great, and so that year I broke through. I was third in the country that year, and felt like.
Did you wrestle on the team the whole year?
I did. Yeah, I was a starter the whole year. And what's funny about that is there was so much concern about me making the team, even with Troy, and my parents were constantly like just trying to be there for me, right? And Troy was there trying to help me, and so we go into our first wrestle off. Troy was an All-American the year before, coming into the year ranked number 2, and we go into the wrestle off, and I win, and Troy gets beat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we both learned at that time that we got to focus on ourselves, right? And we can be here for each other, but we can't give too much either. We got to focus on what each of us needs and then just be there. And so, and Troy ended up, after the first competition, then they had another Wrestlafina competition, and Troy won. And from that point on, Troy was on the team. And then, that our sophomore year, I was third, Troy was second in the country. And so, it was a good year. We definitely, I think, gained some ground. And then, our junior year, you're just plugging along and going through, and you realize there's some challenges here. And, Troy ended up winning the national title our junior year, and was undefeated and really had a great year. And I was fifth in the country. And I took kind of a step back. And again, it was kind of just a reset, like, here it is, right? I mean, I got one more chance, and how am I going to use my year, and how am I going to use my time? And so, just stay dialed in, right? And I think everything came to, I was undefeated. I was ranked number 1 in the country going into the Big Ten tournament my senior year. And at the Big Tens, I got upset by Troy Sunderland from Penn State. And we'd wrestled earlier in the year. I'd beat Troy in the dual meet, and then he beat me at Big Tens. So now I felt my world was crumbling, right? And now at the end of the year, I lost my match. I'm not ranked number 1. I felt like the sky was falling in on me. And I remember, just really having to take a step back. And I thank the coaches for what they did. They took me out of the room. I think sometimes you're so far into the forest, you can't really see it, the trees, right? And they just said, we don't want to see you in the room unless we tell you to be here. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like 10 days before the NCAA tournament. And they said, we want you to get away and just get refreshed a little bit. And I didn't understand it, because the wrestler mentality is more is always better, right? And up to that point, it was probably right. But at that point in time, in that peaking process, maybe less is more, right? And then so they took me out of the room, and they caught me in there one night doing my own workout. And they basically came in and said, we told you we don't want to see you in here. And so I was basically held out of the room. And although I couldn't really understand it at the time, it made me start really thinking about, why is this important to me, right? And you start thinking about the process along the way. You start thinking about how this all started, the people that were involved in your career, and how they've helped you. And I remember my mom and dad calling, like, what can we do? And I remember just saying, like, it's my time, right? It's my time to perform. You guys sit back and enjoy, right? And if this is going to happen, it's going to happen, right? And if it's not going to happen, then it's not meant to be. But it's time for me to perform, right? And it didn't matter at that point. I was, I think, sensible enough to understand that what other people were saying and thinking and doing, it didn't matter. It just mattered how I handled the situation and how I was going to handle, the thoughts between my ears. And so, I went into the national tournament when it probably should have been the most stressful environment for me, with the last chance and your back's against the wall and you're either going to win it or lose it. And I went into that competition probably the most free I've ever felt, right? And to this day, I think if I didn't lose in the Big Tens, I probably would have lost at the national tournament. Because when I was going into the Big Tens, I had so much weight on me. Like, I just wanted to win and it'd be done with. And when I got to the national tournament, I just couldn't wait to get out on the mat. And the coaches took the mat away from me, right, for about 5 days. They took me off the mat, and all of a sudden I couldn't wait to get on the mat again. And so I think just that change of attitude and mindset completely changed my experience at the NCAA tournament my senior year. Because when I went out on the mat at the NCAA tournament, it was about just really, going out to win, but enjoy the moment, right? This is it, enjoy it. And so, and I remember that vividly, right? And before that, even right after the Big Tens, I guess my sports psychologist at the time was a great friend of mine, Maury Adams. Maury, he came to me and he said, "What's your worst fear right now?" And that was the week before. And I said, "Well, it's pretty simple. My worst fear is leaving here not being the national champion." And he reached his hand out and he said, "Give me your fear." I was like, "Okay, I'm going to give you my fear." And he said, "No, I'm serious." He said, "Give me your fear. If you can't get rid of it, if you can't change the dialogue in your head, call me. Give me your fear." And the one thing he said after that was probably the most critical, is he said, "You don't need this. Whether you win or lose next week at the national tournament, it's not going to change who you are. You're still the same person." And he said, and I said, "Then why do we do this?" And he said, you do it because you want to do it, not because you need to do it." And I think when he said that to me, like, I don't need to win this, I can feel it to this day. And it was over 30 years ago, but that weight just fell off my shoulders. And then it was about just doing it because you want to do it. And those moments, what Maury said and what the coaches did, taking me off the mat, definitely is why I sit here today as the national champion, right? Is because of them being smarter than me and taking me away from something that I needed to get a little bit of separation from. And so, you need good people around you, right? And I think that's the one thing I've been blessed with my whole life, is I've been blessed to be around good people. And, if that's my parents, if that's my brother, if that's the coaches and my mentors around me, I've been blessed in that realm. And so, and because of that, because of their work, because of their intelligence, because of what they poured into me, hopefully I can pour that into others right now, right? And give that back to a sport and a life that's been very good to me. So
That's pretty impressive.
so I, you say it's just a sport, and people say that, and it's so much more.
No, it's
right?
it's a way of life. I agree.
I've learned so much from this sport, and it's not always fun, right? Sometimes there's hard. I mean, this sport slaps you in the face, right? I mean, and so does life, right? At times,
isn't it 90% drudgery and then 10% like you're like, I can do no wrong, but then you go back to the drudgery again.
well, and I think that's the other side of it, is, right, you've got to fall in love with the process, right? And then I don't think we're in this life to enjoy every moment, right? I think we're in this life to appreciate what every moment is for, right? To figure that out and appreciate that even in the midst of our struggles, what can we learn from this, and how can we move forward? And I think that's really what this sport has taught me, right? Is that, there's going to be hard days, right? There's going to be miserable days. There's going to be weeks where you don't feel like doing this, but there's something greater here to learn, right? There's something greater to learn from those kind of moments. And if you can take something positive from them, and I always think that there's something, you can either take something negative or positive, right? I choose to take the positive, right? I look for the positive in things and people and situations, and that's how I live my life, and that's how I want to live my life, and that's a choice. Right.
Agreed. Great reminder. Thank you. I wrote it down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we
So,
all need it, right? We all need that.
amen. Well, you know my story, and professionally, I want it to be hard. It's been very hard recently, and I complain.
Yeah.
My wife asked me how my day was, and I fall into the trap occasionally of explaining all the tribulations. And my wife took the place of my mom, I think. Meaning she's not simple. She's like, you want it to be hard. That's why you make it big and do it the way you're doing. And for sure, I want the rock. Like Sisyphus had the rock. I want the rock. Michael
Yeah.
Jordan wanted the rock. I want the rock.
Right.
And I think most people that are competitive people, they yearn for that. Vince Lombardi said it. I think down deep, people yearn for that challenge, they want it to
Yeah.
be hard, and they want to see what they're going to be made of.
For
When,
sure.
but I really like the freeing yourself. You used the word free, and Mark Allen used that word too. He wasn't competing against Dave Scott anymore. I mean, he did say, if I win, I want to beat him on his best day, but he really wanted to have his best race. And that's what you're saying. I want to
Yeah.
make the most of my gifts and
Yeah.
just be the best human being I can be. And
Yeah. And some days I fail, right? I mean, some days
most
I
days
fail,
for me, I
right?
don't
I
want
mean, for sure. I
can
mean,
always do better.
I'm not always the best husband or, the best father or, the best coach. I mean, I try to be, but it doesn't, it's, that's a constant, right? That's a constant. That's my wrestling match right now, right? Is how do I win those moments and those days? And, so, do I miss competing? I'm still competing every day, I feel like, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, it
still am.
has to be, otherwise it's not interesting. There's a
Yeah.
fine line between being happy with what you got and wanting to be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And,
to me,
there's days that I yearn for. I can't wait to be retired someday and but I know, I know deep down that what am I going to do? I keep
right.
saying it to my wife, like, what, I need something to focus on. I need something
Mm-hmm.
to, engage me and to pull me in. And so I
Well,
don't
you're a
know.
champion too, and you've been competing and operating at a high level for a long time, and that's a very powerful stimulant. There's not much that takes the place of that, of struggle. Like, I like to talk to people about how we rob our children of the joy of overcoming. Like, if we do things for other people and rob them of that joy of buckling down and doing it, like, you looked inward after a while. It didn't matter what Coach Gable said to you. You knew he loved you at some level,
Yeah.
and you were talking to you. And I
Right.
just feel like, just that's the
No.
biggest joy. The greatest joy is having that self-talk and saying, even though it's impossibly hard, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, no, and definitely that. I think when I first got to the University of Iowa, I wondered if I belonged,
Mm,
right? Do I belong in this place?
mm-hmm,
Am I good enough to be here, right? And after a couple years, I didn't think I should be beat,
mm-hmm,
right? I mean, it was just that, and that I wasn't one of these athletes like a Cale Sanderson or Kyle Dake who won everything, right? I just wasn't, but there definitely was a change in mindset, right? And I remember my senior year, the Coach Gable coming to me and he goes, I'm gonna break you this year. Like mentally break me because he was gonna push me that hard. And I remember at that point it was like, good luck, right? Because I knew he couldn't get to that space in me, right?
Pretty
Nobody
private.
no nobody can get to that space, and you're
Right,
not going to be one of them either,
right.
right? And I know that I can overcome whatever you throw to me. And but if he would have said that my freshman year, I probably would have packed my bags and left.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it just wasn't there yet. But it was definitely, I grew so much during that process, right?
mm-hmm,
So I'm forever thankful for Coach Gable and the people around him and the environment that they created, right?
mm-hmm.
And so that forever will be meaningful.
Amen. So we're only halfway done. How much time do you have?
I have a hard stop at 2:00. I have another meeting, so I got
All right. Well, we got to
35
talk
minutes.
about like what like the real stuff that's going on now, not all that play stuff from college.
Yeah.
So you get married, you have a young family, you're looking at different coaching opportunities, and someone calls. Was it Zaleski? Who was it? I forget.
When
Who
I
called
when
you?
I started this job, well, I was coaching at the time. I was coaching at the University of Wisconsin, and
Mm-hmm.
I was really antsy to be a head coach. At that time, uh, I was an assistant coach at the college level for 8 years, 2 years at Oregon State, and 6 years at Wisconsin. And I was just antsy, and I told my wife, like, we're not going to be here next year. At the NCAA tournament, I just said, we're not, in 2002, I said, we're not going to be here next year. I need to make a change. And just because I was just ready to be a head coach. And so I called Rich Bender, who is our executive director at USA Wrestling, and asked him if he would give me a letter of a recommendation for one of the college jobs out in California that was opened up. And he said, yeah, I'll give you a letter of recommendation, but what do you think about this job? And I said, what job? He said, the women's national team coach. And I was like, Rich, you got the wrong guy. And he said, well, will you listen to me? And I said, yeah, I'll listen to you. But I said it reluctantly. I was like, yeah, I'll listen, rolling my eyes. And so he said, I want to call you tonight. So this is in the morning, mid-morning after a workout. And so I went home for lunch, and my wife was at home, and she said, did you call Rich? And I said, yeah. He said he'll give me a letter of recommendation, but he threw this at me. She said, what? And I told her, and she said, yeah, why wouldn't you look at it? I said, did you hear what I just said? The women's national team coach. And she said, yeah, but why wouldn't you look at it? It's an opportunity in the sport of wrestling. And so I kind of shook my head, and I walked out the door like she doesn't know what she's talking about. And my brother, who was also an assistant coach at Wisconsin at that time, I went over to his place. He lived a mile away, and we talked about it. I said, if I would take this job, I said, can you imagine what my peers are going to think? Because at the time, the Title IX issue was so real, because we were losing men's programs and they were blaming it on women, right? And I said, I just don't know. And Troy just said, he said, I don't. We talked about it a while, and he just said, I don't know if that's a good reason not to look at it. He said, because if you're going to come back into, I said, if I take this position, like, I don't know if I'll ever get back into college wrestling because nobody will hire me. And he said, well, I don't know if that's a good reason, because he said, if you come back into college wrestling, you're not going to be coming in as an assistant coach. You'll be coming in as a head coach. And you're going to, the administrators are going to want to know you can work with everyone. Right. And it's going to give you more experiences. And I kind of left my brother's place kind of the same way I left my house. My twin brother and my wife, the two people I'm closest to, they were no help at all. Right. I was looking for a way out, and they weren't giving it to me. Right. And so then I really had to sit back and think, like, why do I want to stay in the sport of wrestling? And why, I'm done competing, and what is it about this sport? And I think I speak like a lot of coaches do. I believe in the sport of wrestling, right? I believe in the character development, the human development, what it gave me, what it gave my brother, what it gave our family, what it's giving our families. And I just believe in the sport. And so then my next question to myself, if that's really why you're doing it, to move, to advance someone and move someone forward, then why does it make a difference if it's a man or a woman in front of you? And I didn't have a good answer, right? And so I called Rich.
Coincidentally, you had a daughter.
And so I called Rich, and I said, Rich, I need some time. I'm starting to realize that I need some time on this. And so it's like 3 weeks later, I'm still laboring over this, and I'm so afraid what my peers are going to think. And my wife she just looked at me, and she said, you know what? She said, I hate how you're thinking right now. I said, it's just a big change, and it's going to could change the trajectory of my career, right? It's not a light decision. And she said, you know what? She said, I was a young girl in the late 60s, early 70s, living in rural North Dakota, listening to people boo and ridicule and harass. She said, what do you think I was watching? And I said, I don't know what you were watching. She said, I was watching a girls' basketball game. And she said, this is the start of something.
Mm.
And, it just became an Olympic sport in the fall of 2001. So now in the spring of 2002, USA Wrestling is looking to hire a national team coach. And then what Jody said to me next was really what probably pushed me over the edge to take the position. She just said, she said, you have a young daughter. And what if she wants to follow in your footsteps? And I knew right then that it was the right decision to do, because the one thing that our parents gave Troy and I was opportunity. If it was good for us, there was nothing that was going to hinder that. They were going to give us that opportunity to better ourselves. And so I said, it's the right decision. I called Rich the next day and said, I'll take the position. And I said, I'll give you 2 years through the 2004 Olympics. And then I'm going back to college wrestling. But when I took the position, I think I realized very quickly that it was a lot more than a wrestling coach position. It was about women's rights, human rights, civil rights. It was opening up opportunity for a whole gender of people that they didn't really have, and they weren't welcomed in. And I knew that coaching a team is one thing, changing people's minds and hearts towards the sport is another thing. And I knew that was going to take time. And so, I've had my opportunities to go back into the men's college wrestling or women's college wrestling, and it's just I found my place. I think with the help of a lot of other people over time, I think we've changed the trajectory, and we've changed people's minds and hearts, and now the women are at least somewhat welcomed into a male-dominated sport. Right, and we still have a lot of work to do, right? But we've made a lot of progress along the way. So that and I'll just give you some numbers. If you go back to 2002, we had 3 states that were sanctioned in the sport of girls high school wrestling, and we had 5 college programs. And today we're at 45 states that are sanctioned in the sport, and we have over 150 college programs, right? And so I'm pretty proud of that, right? I'm pretty proud of that growth and that progression, and it's been a wonderful ride. It's been the right thing, right? And my daughter has benefited from it. I think my wife has benefited from it. I think just being around some pretty motivated people, and not just on the mat, but administrators and everything like that want to do the right thing and want to move this sport forward, and just being a part of that has been a great thing, right? And I think Raven having these athletes as big sisters and people to look up to and lean on at times has been a great thing for her, being an only child, right? So I think in a lot of ways it's been the right decision. So that's where we are at right now.
So say 5 years from now, if we're looking back at today, what would have had to happen that you felt like you'd made the progress you wanted to make?
Well, I think there's a few things left, right? That I think, I'd like to get to 50 states that are sanctioned, right, in the sport of girls high school wrestling. We have 5 left. I'd like to see us move from emerging sport to championship status at the NCAA level with our college programs, and we're there. I mean, we're the committee has recommended us to move from emerging sport to championship status, but now each division has to look at that and agree on that. And so we're very, very close for that to happen. And then, I'd like to, for this team and this program to stand on top of the award stand, right? And that hasn't happened yet. We've been second and third a lot of times, right? And our nemesis is still Japan, and the countries like Japan and China, are constantly a challenge for us, and there are others, Mongolia and Ukraine and Russia. I mean, those are countries that are a constant reminder of why we go to work every day, right? I mean, because they're not falling down, right? And so we're going to have to climb above them. And so, but I think the infrastructure we have in place, and it's becoming more and more solid, and our numbers are growing unbelievably, right? Like 2 years ago, last year, we went from 36,000 athletes, female athletes within USA Wrestling, to 53,000 in 1 year. So we grew basically 50% in 1 year. And so, if we keep that kind of growth up, it's going to become a numbers game, right? And our time will come, right? And I do think that there will come a day that the U.S. dominates the world of women's wrestling. I don't know if I'll still be sitting in this chair, but it's coming. It's coming. And so, but for that to happen, it would be fun to be a part of that, right? Because we've done so much work along the way, and there's so many great people and organizations that are really at this point behind that effort. And when I first started, it felt like I was fighting everyone, and now it feels like there's an army of people behind it, and so that feels really good. And so I'd like to see everyone be able to cherish that moment, right? But we'll see if that happens. We got to keep working.
Whatever happens, it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's a movement. I mean, you've arguably, not that, I mean, I would imagine you would have been the greatest college coach ever, and you would have done great in the NCAA. But this is so much bigger, in my view. I mean, it's just my opinion. Like, it's enormous. It's wholesale change over 2 decades, more than 2 decades.
Yeah, and it's hard to it's hard to know what. I mean, yeah, I mean, we had to have some success to build success, and we've had good athletes in here to help make that happen, and but I just think that it was the right time too, right? It was the right time. I mean, look at women's athletics today.
Well, you've
compared
talked
to
about
where
soccer before.
Yeah,
Where
compared
it
to where they
came.
were 30 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at women's basketball today. I mean, they got higher ratings than anything, right? So it's time, right? Women are moving forward in this society and in all aspects, right? It's great to just be a part of that, right? And to see that, hopefully our champions on the mat today are our leaders in this country tomorrow, right? In different realms. And so that's my hope, right? That's my hope. It's not just about winning. It's about a lot more than that. I always say to my coaches that, our goal is very simply stated by USA Wrestling and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. I mean, it's about, they want medals, right? As coaches, we have to have a lot larger mission and a lot broader mission, right? It's more than winning. It's about, I want to see people 10 years after their careers well adjusted. I want to see them happy in their lives. I want to see them being able to handle life as it comes to them. And because they were involved in this sport, because they were involved in this program and this organization, that they're a better and stronger part of society, right? That's the true value of sport, right? The true value of sport. Not everyone's going to be the Olympic champion, but everyone can gain from it. Everyone that steps on the mat can gain from this sport and become a better and a stronger human being because of it, regardless of what their record is on the mat.
Sure.
The lessons they learned off of it, yeah, and in the pursuit of it, of that excellence.
It,
That's where it's gained.
I mean, you're definitely changing people. Some of the athletes you've told me about, you're changing their lives. Like in my case, I had two loving parents, four great brothers, but I was really lost. And I had this wrestling coach who's my friend to this day, and you'll meet at the NCAAs. And he just took an interest in me. And if
Mm-hmm.
not for him, I tell people maybe I'd be in jail. I don't really know.
Sure.
But, I would be bad at school and he would wait. I swear to God, he would wait because I would walk to school and he would wait until he saw me and then he would drive up and he'd be like, get in. And the
Mm-hmm.
half mile to school, he'd be like, what are you thinking? And he would straighten me out. We'd make a deal. And, that happened over and over and over. And like you're doing that on a grand scale. And I can't imagine. And I think it's true of other sports, as you point out, but there's a certain intimacy in wrestling, like obviously the physical intimacy or the closeness, but there's a certain connection that takes place between leadership, someone in your position, and the athletes and the people that are drawn to it. There's pretty fiercely independent people too,
Yeah,
but they
for
need
sure.
help, a lot of them.
Yeah, but that's
It's life.
I always say, like, coaching is, to me, it's no different than parenting, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you at the beginning, the athletes probably need us a lot more, right? I mean, and I hope it's that way, right? I hope that if I look back at raising Raven, I hope she needs me a lot less now than she did when she was 12 years old, right? And as time goes on, even less and less, right? And yeah, we still want each other and want to be involved in each other's lives, but right, she should be able to stand on her own 2 feet and handle life as it comes to her. And I want that strength for her. And really, our athletes are no different, right? When they're a young athlete coming up, we need to give them a lot of attention, and a lot of time, and a lot of uh, nurturing and coddling. But as time goes on, they've got the best ones start to stand on their own 2 feet, right, and
Mm-hmm.
start to take matters into their own hands. And so that's really what I hope for as a coach, as I see, like, an Adeline Gray grow. The first time I met Adeline Gray, she's like 15, 16 years old, and now she's, 33 years old and has kids of her own. And you just watch this person blossom,
And
right?
she's still wrestling.
She's still wrestling. She's still our number one ranked person,
Mm-hmm.
and just unbelievable. She inspires me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It comes full circle, and now
Mm-hmm.
she's coming. It's coming around. She said that we were in a meeting last fall, and she asked me, like, "Oh, tell me something I'm doing," because being a coach, I'm critical, right? I'm like, we need to correct this, this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
and she's saying, "Tell me something I'm doing good." And I said, "Are you kidding me, Adeline? Like, you're inspiring all of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, how you're living your life, and how you're just taking care of every single aspect of your life. And wrestling is a part of that, but it's not everything. We understand that at this point in your life, it's not everything, but it's still important to her. She still wants to be. Now she's inspiring her kids. She's inspiring us as coaches. She's inspiring the organization. I mean, it comes full circle, right? And so um, that's success, right? That's success. If Adeline never won another wrestling match in her life, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. What she's done and gained from this sport, that's why you do your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you do your
So we talked
job.
about it a little bit, the culture at Iowa and different styles. Um, can I ask another question about totally
Mm-hmm.
unrelated?
Sure.
Like the styles, if you could contrast the styles of like Coach Gable, who I view as, one of the greatest wrestlers ever and certainly one of the greatest coaches ever, to someone like Cale Sanderson, one of the greatest wrestlers ever and one of the greatest coaches ever. Like, how are they alike and how are they different?
I don't think they're so different. I think people think they are, when they look at it. Iowa wrestled a very in your face, intimidating style, right? And that's kind of what people take from, if you talk about Iowa wrestling, there all of a sudden you get this stigma that They're just very like they're robots, and they're in your face, and they're hard nosed, and they're not very friendly people, and they're not. That's the side that people see, right? If you go back to how Coach Gable led his teams, uh, although he was a man of few words, he was personal in his own way, right? And he was very intimate, and he was there for you, right? And he created an environment that it was hard not to be successful, right? It was hard because he put so many great people around you. It wasn't just about him, and he didn't dictate what you were doing. He wanted, there was a standard of excellence that he expected, and how he wanted you to wrestle. Yeah, maybe that was it, but I don't see that much difference in how Kale does things. And I know, when you talk about Penn State wrestling, obviously there's a standard of excellence that there's an expectation there, and how he leads his team is maybe a little bit, I would say, more lax. But you don't get that kind of success not having strong expectations in that room, right? And he's put people around those young athletes, right? Like the Kyle Snyders, the Cale Dakes, the Thomas Gilmans, the people that are another level up, right? And so those younger ones are always striving to become that. And I think Gable was ahead of his time with that, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he had the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and he had these people like Brad Penrith and Royce Alger, and uh, those, the Bannock brothers, the Randy Lewises, the people like that they were the heroes of that time, right? And they were around us as young people, young kids in that program, and they, there was an environment of excellence, right? And they were working hard every day, and we were following their lead, just trying to find our own way.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that that's kind of how Kale leads too. And Gable, there was never hey, if you didn't want to do your job, Gable wasn't going to make you do it, right? I mean, you knew someone else was there that would do it for you, right? And so it was self-motivated, right? I mean, it pushed you from the inside, because you knew that there was a guy right beside you that would take your spot if you weren't going to do it yourself. And so it drove itself. And I think really, if you look at the talent in the Penn State room today, it's no different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can only create the environment, right? And from the environment, then comes everything else. And so I think that they're a lot alike in a lot of ways. I think,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of people they are, they're just kind of, just no nonsense. They're just who they are. And they don't apologize for it. And it's just who I am. I'm not fancy. I'm not flashy. I'm not going to, be you know, be the charismatic person in the room or this or that. That's not who they are. Right. And they're just going to tell things how it is. And this is what we do in this room. And this is how we go about our business. And being around, some of the Penn State guys now, in international competitions, the Jake Varners of the world and people like that, Kyle Dakes and Kyle Snyder, they're the same. They're the same, right? I mean, I think they're just going about their business, and they're pulling people up along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you build a dynasty, right? Is you put people in there that others can follow,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a lot more than a one-man show, right?
Oh, sure.
And that's the greatness of both of them, I think, is they put good people around them, right?
Mm-hmm. So we're getting towards the end. I know you have another appointment. I like to say that the hyphen is the most important punctuation in the English language. It's what's between our date of birth and our date of death.
Yeah.
So, looking back on your life, if you weren't around, what would you want people to remember about you?
uh, I just think that you want to know you've made a difference, right? You want to know that you've changed things for the better. You want to know that you've been there for people, right? And I would come back to the first thing I said at the beginning. Do you pray to be blessed, or do you pray to be a blessing? I hope I've been a blessing to people I've been around, right? I hope that that's how I'm remembered, and I hope that, when my days are done, I hope my daughter can be proud, right? And I think that's what it's about, right? Is you want something there that people are going to be proud of, right?
Amen. Well, I'm a big fan. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Is there anything else that you might like to ask me or say before we wrap up?
No, I want to thank you for having me on, and I just want to thank you for your friendship and your mentorship, and what you've meant to me. I mean, I've learned so much from you in the short time we've known each other, and that's what life's about. I think is you're a great leader in your realm, in your world, and I know that, and I can see how you go about your business, and it's not about, I love how it's not about the finance, right? It's about helping people. It's about being there for people, and that's how I was raised, and that's how I was brought up, and I believe in it 100%. So I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. This was great.
You bet. I'm always available for stuff like this. I think if people listen to it and they can take something from it, then great.
Terrific. I'll give everyone your cell phone number. All right. Have a great afternoon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.